Hi, Kate.
Hey, Lindsay. I'm trying to share this behind the scenes, and I'm not seeing it live on VECINA. Just FYI.
Okay, let me see. I got 2 notifications that VECINA is live now, so I'm hoping that that's true. And it says there's 8 people watching. Hi, everyone.
Hey, guys. Sorry about the behind the curtain business.
I feel this way every time, and I feel like it always comes off where I'm like, what's happening? Anyway, for those of you who are watching, if you have questions, you can post in the chat, and I'm hoping we'll see them like this. Hi, Lindsay Bennett. How's it going? Anyway, I'm super excited to be doing this.
Yeah, it is really exciting. I was just mentioning to you right before this, I'm like, I'm all fired up. We got something to do. So that part's exciting, and it is also distressing, but
yes,
we'll talk about that.
For sure. Okay, so first, I guess we should introduce ourselves and introduce VECINA. So do you want to start?
Sure. So my name is Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch. I am a private immigration lawyer based in Austin, Texas, but I serve as board chair of VECINA, which is an organization I obviously support wholeheartedly. It was launched by my dear friend Lindsay here, who will introduce herself in a moment. But Lindsay was also a private immigration lawyer like me. And during family separations, we had sort of a similar flurry of activity relating to reuniting separated moms. And Lindsay made the, I think, very brave and impressive decision to launch VECINA, which is a really innovative organization, in my humble opinion, because it provides legal services, pro bono legal services to migrants in a new way. So what we do at VECINA, it's a small, new fledgling organization, but has a pretty significant impact. And what we do at VECINA is partner with legal service provider nonprofits on the ground, wherever the crisis of the day is happening. And we work with them to get referrals for migrants who are needing help. And then what VECINA does is recruit and train pro bono attorneys who may have zero experience in the immigration realm, but we also recruit, experienced immigration attorneys as mentors who may be maxed out in their pro bono capacity, but they have capacity to guide and teach pro bono attorneys who they might be doing this for the first time. So it just really it really expands the reach of pro bono work. And what can often happen, especially in times of crisis, like during family separations, like during the MPP program. And I think what we're seeing right now is, I wouldn't call it a crisis in the same way. And we can talk about sort of messaging and all that. But the organizations or the legal services providers who are on the ground providing the support of the migrant kids or the separated families or whomever, the people in MPP, get completely overwhelmed with providing the service. And so the idea of setting up and launching a project where they go out and find volunteers, teach the volunteers what they need to do, do training videos, get them help so that the volunteers know what they're doing through every step of the process. I mean, that is so far beyond what people in a triage situation have capacity to do. So that's where VECINA comes in and is we can do all that part. We can do that for you. And that's what we're doing now related to the migrant kids at the border. And I'm giving myself goosebumps talking about that. I'm such a nerd.
But it's just the right spot, right?
Yeah, no, it's a really cool organization, and it's all the credit goes to Lindsay, for doing it. And the organization has partnered with really, I think, well-known and established organizations on the ground, like HIAS and Al Otro Lado. And now we're working behind the scenes with the orgs that are serving these minors who are in custody. And so anyway, it's really cool. So thank you, Lindsay, for launching this. And thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Awesome. Well, I love that you're a part of it. And it was basically a joint venture. So we're here because we just launched our new family reunification project, because as a lot of you, I'm sure know, there are a bunch of kids that have recently been processed in at the border and have family members or other sponsors in the United States. And, that process can be scary, not only for the kids, but it can be scary for the adults as well, because it's a lot of paperwork and a lot going on. And so And so we're hoping to jump in and help and recruit volunteers to help too. So I want to talk first about why there's an uptick, because you talked about messaging earlier, Kate. Why is there an uptick of, kids coming to the border? Like, why is this happening?
Okay. And I think we have to be really careful because the optics of this aren't good. And of course, certain people are seizing on this as an opportunity to compare Biden's policies to the previous administration's policies and say that the same thing is happening. And I want to be really, really clear about what's happening. We are seeing an immigration processing system for migrants, asylum seekers, getting back online. It was completely stopped during the previous administration 1 year ago under a COVID safety pretext. And I will just say that Title 42 expulsions, as they apply to migrants, was finally implemented during COVID as a way to sort of stop COVID from coming in the country. But it's been widely reported that the previous administration attempted the same Title 42 expulsion project because of the moms that didn't move forward. So a year ago, Title 42 under the Health and Human Safety Code, Health and Human Services Code, I always forget what the second S is, basically, ruled that every migrant seeking asylum, whether it be a family group or family unit, single adults or unaccompanied minors, were being expelled or sent back to their countries. And this is separate from MPP. So MPP is the pre-Title 42 program where migrants who were seeking asylum were sent back to Mexico to await their court hearings. And that's where we saw the migrant tent camps, pop up in Matamoros and San Isidro and all the border tent camps happen. Well, MPP predates Title 42. So there's tens of thousands of migrants who were placed in MPP, and they're in ongoing asylum proceedings. And when the Biden administration canceled MPP, they initiated a rollback to, slowly process in migrants in MPP. So they register with an organization called ACNUR, and then they get a date to be processed in. Okay, so that's MPP. That's like a discrete group of people. MPP no longer exists. Now what we have is Title 42 expulsion still in place as it pertains to adult asylum seekers and family groups and family units for the most part, but not as it pertains to unaccompanied minors. So that's why all of a sudden we've got unaccompanied minors coming in to the border because Biden lifted the Title 42 expulsions in part. I am of the opinion that they ought to just be lifted in whole, because one of the unfortunate outcomes of this partial lifting, so just for unaccompanied minors, is that family units who are in Mexico wanting to apply for asylum many are making the excruciating decision. I mean, if you could only imagine, I know a lot of us are parents, to send their kids in alone because the kids are the only ones who are getting in. So that's part of the problem. But that's where we are. That's like where we are right now. MPP is slowly being processed. Title 42 expulsions were lifted only as they apply to children. And adults and families are still not permitted to apply for asylum right now.
Right. Unaccompanied children. And
Right.
that can mean someone who comes alone or someone comes with who's not with their parent. Right.
Right.
And so, yeah. And then, of course, right, the kids that were expelled are now turning around and coming back because they're able to.
Right. And that's where it comes to like the reality of the situation is migrant children have been being expelled for the last year, many of whom have legitimate asylum claims. So we see the system turn back on and there is a backlog.
There is a flow.
There's a backlog, but that doesn't equal overwhelming surge that's going to last forever that we can't handle. Like, I think we have a flash in the pan kind of situation that if we want to point the finger at someone, the blame goes to the person who completely canceled asylum processing, which I might add, we had a whole system in place for 4 decades that was functional. It wasn't perfect. We don't like, private prison detention centers, et cetera. But we have this asylum processing system in place where adults go through a credible fear interview where they get screened for asylum. The kids don't have to go through that. But we had this system in place. You break it, you shut it off, and you can't just turn it back on in a day, So it's just keeping in mind why we're here, why we're seeing what we're seeing is not because Biden has cruel or inhumane policies. That's not accurate.
Right. But we're also partially here to make sure that those policies and things are in place, like the Flores settlement agreement, and which we'll talk about in a little bit, that those things are followed.
That's right.
Because we do want to make sure, with an influx of kids at the level that there is, it's hard, to follow every policy and procedure to the T. And so what we're hoping to do with the volunteers is to get people advocating for individual children so that these children can get with their families, as quickly as they can. I mean, there is going to be processing. I mean, processing has to happen, but but hopefully we can, help hold their feet to the fire a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is obviously these kids have, they have to go through, like Lindsay said, like a process, we have to make sure, okay, let me just say 80% of these kids, 4 out of 5 have a relative in the US, 40% have a parent. So almost all of them have somewhere to go. And so the vetting process where their sponsor, is background checked if that's what's required or does the paperwork that they need to do to get the kid, that just needs to be prioritized and happen as quickly as possible. In the meantime, the kids need to be held in a safe, secure, warm, comfortable environment, and that hopefully they'll only be there for a matter of days. That's not currently happening based on what we're hearing, but I am hopeful that we'll start to see some improvement really quickly.
For sure. So you mentioned about the processing and the flow. So let's talk about sort of how, when kids come to the border, like where do they go first? Where do they go next? And then what happens after that?
Okay, so in the beginning, when they're apprehended or they come to the bridge, they're placed in custody with Border Patrol or CBP, and they're held in these processing stations. And these are the stations that, gained so much notoriety a few years ago when they got overwhelmed. These are Border Patrol processing stations that technically have beds, but they are not meant to be, long or medium term facilities. So there's like concrete benches that serve as beds. They tend to be very cold. And there's all sorts of different types, like the hielera, the perera, like there's all sorts of different types. But the bottom line is the Border Patrol processing centers should be just that, where they process someone and these kids are not in law enforcement custody for a very long period of time. And these facilities are not meant to house people for a long period of time. What we're seeing in this moment is that kids are being held longer than they ought to be in the processing centers. And so one of the requirements under the Flores settlement is that they have 3 days, I think, 72 hours to get the kids, unaccompanied kids from CBP to an ORR facility, which is Office of Refugee Settlement, which is under Health and Human Services. So it's not technically a law enforcement facility. But all of the, the HHS ORR facilities have been at like completely reduced capacity for the last year. And so they're all maxed right now. And that's when we see like the opening of the Dallas Convention Center to house migrant kids. Now that's technically an ORR facility, but it's obviously not historically a place where kids have resided.
Right. No, not normally. and so when kids are in CBP custody, I mean, that's kind of like a black box. We don't, as attorneys, get to have access to there. We don't know what's going on in there. There's no right to counsel in there.
Nope.
Kids are just in there. So hopefully within 72 hours, and again, we're hearing that has been longer in some circumstances.
Yeah.
And then they go to ORR custody, and that's where we're seeing that, conditions are okay, but we want to make sure that kids are released as quickly as possible. And so in terms of that paperwork, I mean, there are, family members and sponsors that can fill out paperwork and get, in some cases, a background check fingerprinted in order to help the kids get out. And so this is what we're going to help out with, right?
That's right. And I just realized I couldn't see the comments before, but now I do. And I see Virginia here, Giovanna, Melissa, Janet, Anna, one of my friends who's always at my Facebook Lives with my firm, and Bertie. So hi, guys. But anyway, I was just like, oh, there are comments. Yeah. So basically, what happens when these kids get into ORR is they're assigned a caseworker, and then the caseworker does, works with the family members or the sponsor, gives them the information that they need to complete. And it's complicated. It's paperwork, it's a whole application. In some cases, depending on the level of relative that it is, there's a background check. There's fingerprints. The other people in the house have to maybe get fingerprinted depending on the level. There has to be like proof of, relationship, proof of address. It's just a packet. So first of all, there's the cases that I've had just in the last day. There's the finding of the child. Where is the kid? And then helping the parent determine which level they are, what documents they're going to need, and then beginning to initiate the communication with the caseworker in ORR and facilitating the getting of the packet so that the kid can then get released. Ideally, when we launch a pro bono project, we've got a training, and this is what it looks like, and it's clean. And I'll just say, buckle up, because this is going to be an incredibly important and meaningful and fulfilling project if you sign on to take one of these cases. And it's kind of chaotic right now. And so we're not gonna be able to say this is who you call, and this is how you're going to be dealing with, I don't know where this kid is, or my sponsor doesn't have the XYZ document, or they have to be fingerprinted and I can't get them a fingerprint appointment, or, it's messy. But I love this for pro bonos, because this is not in our conversations with the organizations who typically work with the UACs, we've heard repeatedly that there's a gap in services in this area, and specifically helping the sponsor families get these kids out of detention. That historically and especially now, there's not an agency that does that, because it's supposed to be ORR's responsibility, right? The caseworker should be doing this, but in an acute situation like this, there really is a need. So I'm rambling. I'm sorry, Lindsay, you have an agenda.
No. That's important, because it is generally something that in a non-crazy situation that ORR can handle, but they just don't have. What we're hearing is that it will happen without us, but not necessarily in a super timely manner. And of course, we're in a pandemic, processing has to happen. But what we're hopeful to accomplish is to get some kids released faster than they otherwise would. And also, in a situation where there's documents and there's paperwork and it's scary and you need to hear things from a lawyer, it's helpful, for the families to have someone there for them. And just, going back to your comment about it's going to be messy, and it absolutely is, but we're also going to be here to hold your hand. And so, if you don't know where a child is and can't find them, we are happy to help you, figure out who you should start calling. Kate had a case yesterday where someone called, didn't know where the kid was, and, was able to call Office of Refugee Resettlement, ORR, and at least get some response.
I still haven't found the kid, but I'm working on it. But so VECINA, for those of you watching this who are not familiar with VECINA yet, that one of the beautiful things about the organization is that we recruit and train pro bono attorneys, but then we partner you with an experienced mentor who is there for you every step of the way. So that's one, source of comfort. And the other thing I'll mention is that, you can sign up to get a kid out, and that'll be a project that ideally will be over, within a couple of weeks max. But, with these cases, you may end up falling in love with your family, and these kids are going to need long-term representation, because right now we want to get them out. but then they're all going to be placed in removal proceedings. And some of them are going to be seeking asylum because they fled, gang violence for the most part. These are kids from the Northern Triangle, mostly, and many of them have fled gang violence and will have asylum claims. But also many of them might qualify for special immigrant juvenile status. So there's going to be removal defense needed. Now, there will be lots of NGO support nationwide for these kids, I think, wherever they go. But there will also be a need for pro bono attorneys to take these cases long term in removal proceedings. So you can stick with your kiddo if you want to.
Yes, it's not required. The ask for everyone is that you take a case that hopefully within a matter of weeks will be resolved and the child will be out. Some it may be a matter of a couple of days. One of the things that I think, is helpful is we talked a lot about pro bono attorneys, but we actually have opportunities for non-attorneys in this go round. And Kate, I want you to talk about that because in your defense of it, like in one of the cases that you're doing, you guys have put like a little team together
Totally.
to help your clients. And so I want you to talk about sort of that dynamic and how it works with administrative support and interpreter support as well.
Yeah. And of course I have to give a shout out. So I'm working with Dickie Grigg, who's this totally famous and respected civil litigator who is brand new to immigration. He did pro bono detention visits with me to the Carnes Detention Center. I think it was in 2019. He came with me every month. And so we got to know each other. And then he signed on to take a case. And I have the honor of getting to be his mentor. And then one of the VECINA board members, Monica Cano Carroll, has signed on. She's a lawyer, but she lives in Spain. And so she has signed on sort of like as the case liaison. So the three of us now have two cases. And so they're Dickie's cases, but Monica and Dickie and I each have our role, and we're messaging every day. In fact, we have one of our clients is waiting to cross over from MPP any minute now. So I'm anxiously awaiting an update there. But these are cool cases to do as a duo or a trio, which I think, working with pro bonos, when you're new to something that feels so monumental, which this kind of work is, can be really daunting to do it on your own. So first of all, you're partnered with your mentor. And so you have someone there, but also you could, if you have a friend who is bilingual, if you're an attorney watching this and you don't speak Spanish, but you have a friend who does, you can totally work on one of these cases together, or two lawyers could take a case together. I mean, this is definitely grab a buddy, jump right in, and it'll work in this structure, which makes it a lot more, I think, fun.
Definitely. Sorry, I have a little tickle in my throat. So we're super excited about it. I really enjoy watching teams work together, and I've really enjoyed with the MPP mentees that we have, getting the emails from them that their clients are now entering the United States, as it sounds like yours is today, because it's one of those small victories, but it's such an honor to be a part of something that's a small piece in a story in a happy way.
Yeah, because
these folks have experienced so much, and these kids have experienced so much. And in our trauma-informed lawyering webinar last week, one of the very first things that was said was by Professor Dina Haynes, and she said, your client doesn't owe you anything, including their story. And it's true. We are asking to carry things that we have not earned. And it's such an honor. So.
Yeah. I mean, we just met with one of our friends who is working in one of the facilities as a volunteer. And she told us that these kids are really traumatized right now. They've all fled something. They're alone, and they're, in this giant facility, and many of them have spent too many days in a Border Patrol processing facility. And so, the parents or the family members often are also experiencing quite a bit of trauma. Whenever I do this kind of work, I probably shouldn't, but I always put myself in their shoes. And I think about the case you were just talking about, Lindsay, with the kid we couldn't find. So I called the hotline, and I was told by the person on the other end of the line, oh, this child is still with Border Patrol, he hasn't arrived yet to an ORR shelter. We don't actually know where he is. And we don't know when we'll know. You just have to keep calling us. And I'm a mom, and I think about like, if I called someone looking for my daughter and that's the answer that they gave me, I mean, my whole like head would just blow off, you know? And so like, I don't know what my point is, but these are really overwhelming, traumatic situations that these kids and then their parents are going through. Another person I talked to, her daughter had suffered a really horrific, violent incident and is in the same situation, like somewhere lost somewhere in the system. And she's just desperate, the desperation. So to be able to come in and just say, don't worry, I got you. I'm going to help find your kid. I'm going to help you fill out the paperwork to get your kid out. And then we'll figure out what happens next. But just count on me. I'm here for you. I mean, it's just like, it's an amazing honor to be able to do that for somebody. And it really is, in terms of pro bono projects, a beautiful project because it's short. You know, you can do a lot of work and have like this massive impact on somebody's life.
For sure. And in terms of, you know, we talked a little bit about what the pro bono would be doing, but with interpreters, I mean, you would be helping attorneys communicate directly with the family that is looking to fill out the paperwork to get their child released. And then, you know, for administrative support, that's like, you know, helping the person get the documents, organize the documents, fill out the forms, things of that nature. So, yeah, I mean, some of it's not glamorous, but in the end, it's a huge service for people that need help and often are struggling to navigate it. I'm so sorry.
I don't know what.
And of course, I don't have water.
Oh no, I can't hand you mine through the screen.
Yeah, no, it's not a thing.
Yeah, I don't know what is glamorous. You know, when you say it's not glamorous, like what do we do that is glamorous? I don't even know.
Off on Facebook Live, I think.
Yeah, maybe we're being glamorous right now.
Well, I'm seeing some hellos and some tags, and then someone asked, Lori was asking if there's any space for mental health professionals.
Awesome. Hey, Lori. I don't think we can connect the kids to mental health professionals because they're so restrictive in these facilities about who gets in. I mean, I'm sure you could sign up as a volunteer, like at the convention center in Dallas. And like our friend we were talking to who's in there says, even the lawyers who go in are just playing cards with the kids. It's like not about being a lawyer. It's about helping the kids just feel entertained and cared about. But the parents, I think, are really struggling, the ones that I've talked to. So offering to do sessions, I think, with the parents and then working with the kids once they get out about processing what they've gone through. Oh my gosh. And that stuff then becomes useful, you know, for the representation too. So I think lots of ideas there.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if a mental health professional was interested in providing some admin/interpretation support, if the person speaks Spanish, I think that could be helpful just because as we mentioned, you know, a lot of people are really struggling, you know, and stressed out about all of this. And so, you know, mental health practitioners are positioned well to do some hand-holding and some guiding, not from a legal perspective. The lawyer, of course, will have to do that, but from a like, okay, let's take the birth certificate and can you take a clearer picture of that? Or like, right. You know, learning sort of how to respond and knowing how to respond in stressful situations.
Totally.
But I agree. I think that mental health practitioners, you know, of course, will have a space after children are released and do because they can help with cases and of course help, you know, process through what's happened with children. But I haven't heard too much that shelters are allowing folks in at this time.
They're super restricted. But I know, Lori, you've been so involved in immigration work for years. You probably are already cleared at a lot of facilities and have already been, you know, rejected at others. So I think you probably know the drill.
For sure. I don't see too many others. So here was a question that actually I don't know that I know the answer to. I did see a thing, like a sign-on letter from a senator's office asking for sign-ons for some stronger procedures and policies surrounding this issue and others. And so I think that it's on the radar, but I don't personally know sort of like what the ins and outs are currently. Do you, Kate?
No, but I do have to say, like, I feel like this is a good time to remind, like, we are going to see, I personally am pretty frustrated with the way the media has been reporting on this issue. And I've had words with a couple of reporters in the last week about it. But I think it's really easy to be sensational about this issue, and not that I'm not denying that abuses have happened in these facilities. And like I just mentioned, I've personally witnessed kids who can't be found in the system. Now they're somewhere, they just don't have a good enough system to track it, which is like, that's ridiculous and it needs to be fixed. But I also think we are going to be seeing stories about like, this horrific, awful situation and Biden's so bad and, what's going on with these kids. And I just want to say, like, what we're seeing right now, first of all, is 180 degrees from what we saw during the previous administration, post-family separation. It is not the same thing. The conditions are not the same, and the intent of the administration is completely different. What the previous administration was doing was intentionally harming migrants to send a message to would-be migrants that this is what it'll look like if you come here too. That's what was going on then. Right now, what we have is an administration that's trying to get back to where we were in a humane and orderly fashion, but getting a whole system back online it's a lot. It's a lot to ask that we all of a sudden allow in and process a backlog of a year's worth of unaccompanied minors quickly, safely, securely, humanely. I mean, yes, we want that. We expect that. That's why we're here. We're going to hold people accountable to that. That's what we're going to do as lawyers. But I think we need to be really careful, first of all, what we believe in the media, and then how we talk about it. This is not a border surge. This is not a crisis. This is not an overwhelming number of migrants that the United States can't handle. This is a system getting back online that's struggling to do so quickly. And we can help.
For sure. Speaking of that, someone says, sorry if I missed this, how do I sign up to volunteer? So we have in our regular VECINA Facebook page.
Hi, Cynthia is my friend, so I have to say
hi. In our regular VECINA Facebook page, we have a link to our sort of blog post that we did today that has links to each type of volunteer. And so we can post that in the comments on this once we're done. But it's in our just regular Facebook page. We posted it earlier today. And then Melissa asked if she can help out on the weekends. Definitely weekends, evenings. The main thing is we want to make sure to keep cases moving along. And so you would just want to be with a team that could respond during the week if you weren't able to respond at that time. But I bet a lot of people will be volunteering in the evenings and on weekends. So cool.
Lori had a follow-up. I presume there may end up being roles for mental health folks on the heck yeah, for sure. Because if we're doing asylum or SIJ, we'll need psych evals for both of those case types. So yes, reports and also just ongoing care.
She also said she's been rejected from facilities.
I figured. It's nothing personal, but I know you know that.
Right. Cool. I'm trying to see if I missed anything else, and please feel free to post any more questions or comments if you have them. Just want to make sure we covered everything. I think that's mainly it. So.
Well, thank you, Lindsay, for creating VECINA and this opportunity for us. I'm really excited.
Board. Yeah.
To do this work. And then I'm excited for this project to be over, and then it'll be something else. But there's, as we were talking about yesterday, this is great. We have capacity. We can do this.
We can.
There's a need and we can fill it. So
yeah. No, it'll be great. All right, everyone. Take care and have a good evening. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.